The morning sun shone brightly over the city, reflecting off the shiny glass windows of the luxury car dealership. The place looked impressive from the outside, a symbol of success, power, and wealth. Inside, the polished floors gleamed, and rows of high-end cars were lined up perfectly, each one representing a dream many people longed for. A sense of sophistication and professionalism filled the air, yet beneath the surface, an invisible tension lingered. The CEO stepped out of her sleek black car, straightening her tailored suit and taking a deep breath. She had a purpose today, a mission that was both personal and professional. She wanted to purchase a vehicle that could serve her company well, something reliable, stylish, and commanding. Her mind was focused, her steps deliberate as she walked toward the dealership entrance. She had been here before in different cities and she knew how these places operated. Yet nothing could fully prepare her for what was about to happen. As she entered, the quiet hum of conversation and the soft clicking of shoes on the polished floor greeted her. Salespeople approached, smiling, but their smiles faltered slightly when they noticed who she was. The CEO noticed the subtle change immediately, a shift in energy that she had encountered before, but she remained composed. She walked with confidence, her eyes scanning the showroom, taking in the models she had researched. Every detail mattered to her, from the color options to the interior features, and she knew exactly what she was looking for. A young sales associate stepped forward, extending a hand with a rehearsed smile. The CEO shook it firmly, introducing herself and expressing her interest in a few specific models. She spoke clearly and confidently, explaining her needs for the vehicle, the intended use for her company, and the type of service she expected. The associate nodded, but she could sense a hesitation in his eyes, a subtle doubt about her place in this world of luxury cars. Minutes passed, and the CEO noticed the patterns forming around her. Other customers who entered after her were immediately greeted with enthusiasm, offered refreshments, and guided quickly to their desired vehicles. Meanwhile, she received vague responses, delays, and half-hearted attempts to show her options. The contrast was stark, but she did not show her frustration. She understood that patience and observation would serve her better than confrontation at this stage. She requested to see one of the latest SUV models that had caught her eye online. The associate hesitated, fumbled with the keys, and seemed unsure whether she could even sit in the car. The CEO noticed every detail, the quick glances toward other staff members, the whispered conversations just out of earshot, the way the associate seemed to question her right to be here. Each moment was a subtle reminder that bias was at play, a quiet barrier she had faced many times in her life despite her achievements. While waiting, the CEO took a moment to assess the space around her. The dealership was immaculate, designed to impress and reassure clients of their status. Yet she could see cracks in the facade. The staff's nervous energy betrayed them, revealing assumptions and prejudices they could not fully hide. She found herself thinking about how often people in her position were underestimated, how success did not shield her from discrimination, and how small gestures could reveal much larger biases. A manager finally appeared, a middle-aged man with an air of authority and a carefully neutral expression. The CEO greeted him politely, expecting professionalism. However, the manager's eyes betrayed surprise, perhaps at her confidence or at the fact that she belonged in a space that many presumed was reserved for others. He asked a few perfunctory questions, seemingly trying to gauge her seriousness. She answered each one with calm precision, demonstrating her knowledge, her intent, and her purchasing power. Despite her clarity and professionalism, the manager's body language and tone suggested skepticism. He questioned her choices, subtly implying that perhaps she did not fully understand the value of the model she requested. The CEO listened, keeping her composure. She had dealt with this type of condescension before, and knew the importance of maintaining a calm and assertive presence. Every word, every pause, every gesture mattered. She would not allow anyone to diminish her authority or her ability to make decisions. The associate returned with the keys, slowly unlocking the SUV, as if reluctant to let her inside. The CEO stepped forward and ran her hand along the sleek surface of the car, feeling the quality of the materials, appreciating the craftsmanship. She opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, adjusting it perfectly to her comfort. She turned the steering wheel, examined the dashboard, and tested the features. Every movement was deliberate, a display of her knowledge and experience. Other customers and staff watched, some with curiosity, some with barely concealed judgment. She ignored them, focused entirely on the task at hand. The CEO understood the power of presence, the way confidence and authority could speak louder than words. She tested the vehicle thoroughly, asking specific questions about performance, safety features, and financing options. Each inquiry was met with slight resistance, a subtle reminder of the assumptions others were making about her. The CEO took a step back, noting the time and the inefficiency she had been subjected to. 7 minutes had passed since she entered the dealership, and in that short span the staff's behavior had revealed more than words ever could. They underestimated her, doubted her, and treated her differently than other clients. Yet she remained composed, internalizing her observations and planning her next move. Patience was her ally, but so was decisiveness. She knew that when the time came, she would act, and she would do so with authority. As she prepared to step out of the SUV, she reflected on the subtle dynamics of the room. This dealership, like many others, operated on assumptions, on biases that were rarely acknowledged but constantly felt. The CEO had encountered these barriers throughout her career, moments that tested her patience and resolve. Today was no different. She would navigate this situation as she had done before, with calm, confidence, and an unwavering sense of self-worth. Her mind was clear. She was here to purchase a vehicle, to assert her authority, and to demonstrate that professionalism and competence could not be dismissed. The subtle glances, the hesitant gestures, the whispered doubts, they would not sway her. She had prepared for this moment, and she was ready to confront the situation directly when the time came. The morning sunlight continued to stream through the glass, illuminating the polished floors and reflecting off the cars. It highlighted the contrast between appearance and reality, between what the dealership presented and the subtle truths beneath. The CEO stood tall, ready to take control of the narrative, to demand respect and fairness, and to make a decision that would speak louder than any words. The stage was set, and the next steps would reveal her power, her resolve, and her unwavering sense of authority. After inspecting the SUV thoroughly, the CEO stepped out of the vehicle and looked around. She could see other clients being helped quickly, guided to different models with cheerful staff assisting them eagerly. In comparison, her experience had been slow and hesitant. It was clear that she was being treated differently, and the realization made her even more alert. She understood that patience would be necessary, but she also knew that she would not tolerate disrespect. She approached the young sales associate again and asked for more information on the financing options and warranty packages. He shuffled papers and muttered vague explanations, seeming unsure of what to say. The CEO noticed how he avoided eye contact, instead looking at the manager who stood a few feet away. The manager seemed preoccupied with his phone, glancing up occasionally as if to remind the associate that she was not a priority. The CEO decided to remain calm, maintaining her professional demeanor. She had faced similar situations in boardrooms, during negotiations, and in high-pressure meetings. She knew that the key was to stay composed, to gather information, and to demonstrate confidence. She asked precise questions about interest rates, monthly payments, and trade-in evaluations, forcing the associate to provide answers beyond his initial hesitation. Meanwhile, the manager finally walked over, pretending to inspect something on a nearby desk. His presence was more about appearance than assistance. The CEO greeted him politely and asked if she could schedule a test drive. He hesitated, making her wait several moments before providing a half-hearted response. She could sense that he was attempting to assess her seriousness, perhaps doubting that she could make a purchase or questioning if she belonged in the dealership at all. Time continued to pass, and the subtle tension in the room grew. The CEO remained composed, yet she took mental notes of every gesture and interaction. She observed how the staff interacted with each other, noticing whispered comments, awkward pauses, and quick glances toward her. Each moment confirmed her observation that she was being treated differently because of assumptions they had made about her. She decided to take the initiative and requested a specific feature demonstration in one of the other vehicles she was interested in. The associate reluctantly followed, opening doors and showing her the interior, but his explanations were incomplete and lackluster. She asked direct questions, and he stumbled over answers, clearly uncomfortable. The CEO could see that his training and confidence were lacking, but it was amplified by his visible discomfort around her. As she tested another car, she noticed other clients being attended to efficiently, offered refreshments, and guided through their options smoothly. She could not help but compare her experience, which highlighted the unfair treatment she had been subjected to. She did not let frustration show. Instead, she focused on using the moment as an observation, gathering the information she would need to address the situation effectively. The CEO then requested a meeting with the finance department to review potential offers. The associate led her hesitantly, clearly unsure of the process. At each step, she maintained her calm and professional approach, asking specific questions, requesting documentation, and clarifying every detail. She made sure that her authority and knowledge were evident without being confrontational. She understood the importance of commanding respect through composure and precision. While she waited for the finance team, the CEO watched interactions between the staff and other clients. She could see smiles that were genuine, conversations that flowed easily, and attentiveness that was noticeably absent in her own interactions. The contrast was stark, and she felt a mix of disappointment and determination. She knew that this experience would not define her, but it would serve as a clear example of bias that needed to be addressed. When the finance team finally arrived, she presented her questions and requests clearly. They were polite but slightly cautious, as if unsure how to handle a client who projected authority and confidence. She asked about interest rates, lease options, insurance coverage, and maintenance packages. Each question required careful consideration and precise answers, which they struggled to provide. She noticed the hesitation in their responses, and it reinforced her understanding of the subtle discrimination she was facing. The CEO remained firm but composed, listening carefully and making mental notes of every interaction. She knew that she would address these issues directly when the moment was right. She understood that power was not only in making purchases, but also in asserting one's rights and expectations. Every misstep by the staff and management only strengthened her resolve. As the discussion with the finance team continued, the CEO could feel the tension in the room shift slightly. She projected authority not through aggression, but through clarity, confidence, and precision. Her presence alone was enough to make the staff reevaluate their assumptions, though they did not openly acknowledge it. She remained focused, collecting the information she needed, preparing herself for the next step of addressing the management directly. While waiting for the final documents and approvals, she reflected on how often she had encountered similar subtle biases in different areas of life. She thought about the countless times she had to prove her competence, to assert her authority, and to demand respect in professional spaces. This moment in the dealership was another reminder of the resilience required to navigate a world where assumptions could overshadow achievement. The CEO decided to take a brief walk around the showroom, examining more vehicles and observing staff interactions. She noticed how easily other clients were assisted, and how attentive the staff became when they realized she was paying attention. Every moment reinforced the importance of observation, patience, and readiness to act. She knew that the next step would require decisiveness, and she was fully prepared to take it. She returned to the SUV, reviewing the features again, mentally comparing it with the other vehicles she had seen. Her focus remained on the objective, the purpose of her visit, and not on the disrespect she had experienced. She had the power to make choices and to dictate the terms of her experience. The subtle gestures of bias would not deter her from achieving her goals. As the minutes ticked by, the CEO prepared mentally to speak with the management. She planned to address the subtle discrimination directly, using calm and authoritative language. She understood that confrontation was not about aggression, but about clarity and assertion. Her observations over the past several minutes had provided all the evidence she needed to make a strong and effective statement. She glanced around the showroom one last time before approaching the manager. The young associate stepped aside, sensing the seriousness in her demeanor. The CEO walked with confidence, her posture straight, her gaze steady. She was ready to speak, ready to demand accountability, and ready to demonstrate that professionalism and respect could not be compromised. The scene was set for the next moment, a turning point where patience and observation would give way to decisive action. The CEO had maintained her composure throughout the encounter, gathering information, assessing the behavior of the staff, and planning her approach. Her experience and confidence had allowed her to navigate subtle discrimination with grace, and now she was prepared to confront it directly and assert her authority in a way that could not be ignored. The CEO approached the manager with measured steps, her presence commanding attention without demanding it. She greeted him politely, her tone calm yet firm, signaling that she was here not just as a client but as someone who expected respect and fairness. The manager straightened immediately, perhaps sensing the authority in her demeanor. There was no arrogance in her voice, only clarity and purpose. She began by describing her experience over the past few minutes. She explained how she had been met with hesitation, vague responses, and subtle gestures that suggested she was not expected or welcomed. She outlined the timeline, recounting how other clients were served efficiently while her questions were met with delays and uncertainty. Her voice remained calm, each word deliberate, painting a picture that was impossible to ignore. The manager attempted to respond, offering excuses about staff being busy or unfamiliar with certain procedures. The CEO listened patiently, but did not allow the distractions to take away from the main point. She reiterated the disparity in treatment and the potential impact it could have on the dealership's reputation. Her words were precise and professional, emphasizing that respect and professionalism were not optional, but essential. She then asked direct questions about why the staff had behaved differently toward her compared to other clients. The manager fumbled, unable to give a satisfactory explanation. His eyes darted around the room as if looking for support or confirmation from others, but there was none. The CEO maintained her composure, letting the silence speak as loudly as her words. She did not raise her voice or show anger, but her presence alone communicated that she was not to be dismissed. As the conversation progressed, the CEO pointed out specific instances of subtle bias she had observed. She mentioned the associates' hesitant responses, the unnecessary delays, and the whispered conversations behind her back. Each point was made with calm precision, demonstrating that she had noticed every detail and that she was fully aware of the underlying behavior. The manager shifted uncomfortably, realizing that these actions could no longer be ignored or brushed aside. The CEO emphasized that her goal was not to punish anyone, but to address a serious issue. She explained that respectful service was fundamental to any professional relationship, and that her experience could be a learning opportunity for the staff. She framed her words in a way that highlighted fairness, accountability, and improvement rather than confrontation or blame. Her approach was strategic, aiming to create a moment of realization rather than defensiveness. The manager tried to defend the staff, suggesting that they were inexperienced or new to the process. The CEO acknowledged that training could be a factor, but she insisted that professionalism and respect were non-negotiable. She stressed that assumptions based on appearance or background were unacceptable, and that every client deserved equal treatment. Her tone remained measured, reinforcing her authority without resorting to aggression. She then proposed a way forward, suggesting that the dealership take steps to ensure all clients were treated with the same level of respect and attentiveness. She highlighted how such measures could enhance the dealership's reputation, increase customer satisfaction, and ultimately lead to more sales. The manager nodded slowly, beginning to understand that this encounter was not just about her, but about a broader lesson in professionalism and accountability. Throughout the discussion, the CEO maintained a balance of firmness and composure. She did not allow the manager's excuses or hesitation to sway her focus. Each point she made was backed by observations and facts, leaving little room for denial. She could see the shift in his demeanor, the subtle recognition that he had underestimated her, and that the staff had acted inappropriately. Her approach left a strong impression, making it clear that respect and professionalism could not be compromised. As the conversation continued, the CEO addressed the potential consequences of ignoring such behavior. She explained that word of mouth and reputation were crucial in the luxury car market, and that a single negative experience could affect future sales. Her argument was logical, grounded in real-world outcomes, and impossible to dismiss. The manager listened attentively, realizing that this was not a typical complaint but a well-reasoned and important intervention. The CEO also acknowledged that confronting bias could be uncomfortable, but it was necessary for growth and improvement. She encouraged the manager to see the situation as an opportunity to enhance the culture within the dealership, to train staff more effectively, and to create an environment where every client felt valued and respected. Her words were empowering, framing the conversation as a constructive challenge rather than a personal attack. She then turned her attention back to her own needs, making it clear that her business could not be held hostage by poor service. She reiterated her interest in purchasing a vehicle, but only under conditions that reflected fairness, professionalism, and respect. Her calm determination sent a clear message. She would not tolerate substandard treatment, and she had the means and knowledge to make decisions elsewhere if necessary. The manager, now fully engaged, tried to salvage the situation with a formal apology. The CEO listened, acknowledging the apology but making it clear that words alone were insufficient. She emphasized that action and accountability were required. Her focus was not on creating conflict but on ensuring that the principles of fairness and professionalism were upheld. The weight of her presence and the clarity of her argument made it difficult for him to dismiss her points. The conversation lasted several minutes, during which the CEO maintained a steady, unwavering demeanor. She allowed the manager to speak, responded with thoughtful precision, and continually reinforced her expectations. Each exchange was a demonstration of authority, confidence, and strategic communication. She did not allow frustration or emotion to dictate her responses. Instead, she relied on clarity, logic, and composure. As the dialogue reached its peak, the manager began to acknowledge the mistakes made by the staff. He admitted that they had not treated her as they should have and expressed a desire to correct the situation. The CEO listened carefully, recognizing that acknowledgement was the first step, but she also knew that it needed to be followed by action. She reinforced that accountability was essential and that lessons must be learned from this encounter. The CEO concluded the discussion by outlining the key takeaways she expected: staff training, improved client service protocols, and a commitment to respect and professionalism for all clients. She made it clear that while she valued their products, her respect and time could not be compromised. Her words were firm, deliberate, and empowering, leaving a lasting impression on the manager and anyone observing. After finalizing the conversation, the CEO stepped back and observed the room. The staff, once hesitant and dismissive, now treated her with attentive professionalism, perhaps recognizing the shift in power and expectation. She had managed to turn a difficult and uncomfortable situation into a lesson in accountability, demonstrating that confidence, knowledge, and composure could command respect and enforce change. The CEO's calm authority and strategic communication had transformed the encounter from one of bias and hesitation to one of reflection and accountability. She had made her point clear without resorting to aggression, showing that professionalism, patience, and precision could be more powerful than confrontation. The stage was now set for the next step, where she would decide the outcome of her visit and make a choice that reflected both her authority and her values. The CEO stood in the middle of the showroom, the polished floors reflecting the bright lights and the rows of luxury vehicles surrounding her. She had just finished a firm, clear conversation with the dealership's management, and she could feel the change in the atmosphere. The staff, who had been hesitant and dismissive earlier, now watched her closely, a mix of surprise and respect in their expressions. She had made it clear that she expected professionalism and respect, and that she would not accept anything less. She decided it was time to take action, not with anger, but with a controlled, decisive presence. She addressed the manager directly, explaining that while she appreciated the acknowledgement of their mistakes, her trust could not be assumed simply with words. She made it clear that accountability and corrective action were necessary, and she would not proceed with any business unless the experience reflected fairness and respect. The manager nodded, attempting to reassure her, but she could see that his attempts were perfunctory. She remained calm, letting her presence communicate more than words ever could. She emphasized that respect was earned through consistent action and that any business relationship required mutual understanding and professionalism. Her tone was firm but measured, illustrating authority without aggression. She then turned to the staff, many of whom had been silently observing the interaction. She addressed them directly, highlighting the importance of treating every client equally and without bias. She spoke about how small gestures, delays, and assumptions could create a negative experience and affect the dealership's reputation. Her words were clear and concise, demonstrating that she valued integrity, respect, and accountability above all. The CEO paused to allow her message to resonate. She wanted everyone in the room to understand that professionalism was non-negotiable, Her presence alone reinforced the seriousness of her statements. The staff, who had initially been hesitant, now listened attentively, realizing that she was not only a potential client, but also someone whose authority and insight could not be dismissed. She continued by emphasizing the practical implications of their actions. She explained that in a competitive market, word of mouth and reputation were critical. Any client who felt undervalued or disrespected could influence others, impacting sales and the dealership's image. Her arguments were logical, grounded in real-world consequences, and delivered in a calm, persuasive manner that made it impossible for the staff or management to ignore. The CEO then outlined expectations clearly. She stated that any future clients should receive consistent, respectful service, and that staff should be trained to recognize and address their own biases. She stressed that professionalism should not depend on assumptions about appearance, background, or demeanor. Her focus was not on blame, but on creating lasting change that would benefit everyone involved. At this point, the manager attempted to interject with further reassurances, but she held up her hand politely, signaling that she had heard enough. She reminded him that actions spoke louder than words, and that any future interactions needed to reflect genuine respect and accountability. Her demeanor was calm, yet every word carried weight, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The CEO then made a decision about her own business. She acknowledged that the dealership had quality vehicles and a strong reputation, but she would not compromise her standards or her time. She informed the manager that unless she saw a clear demonstration of professionalism and respect, she would take her business elsewhere. Her tone was firm, reflecting both confidence and authority, leaving the decision in her hands while making expectations unmistakable. After delivering her message, she turned to leave, her steps measured and deliberate. The staff and manager watched as she moved confidently through the showroom, a quiet but powerful presence that commanded attention. Her decision to dismiss them, not out of anger but out of principle, demonstrated that authority, composure, and clear expectations were more effective than confrontation. She paused briefly near the exit, taking in the room one last time. She reflected on how easily bias and assumptions could influence behavior, even in professional environments. She thought about the importance of standing firm, asserting one's values, and demanding respect without compromising integrity. Every subtle gesture, every hesitant response she had experienced earlier, had been an opportunity to observe and learn. And now it was time to act. As she exited the dealership, she felt a sense of empowerment. She had navigated a difficult situation with poise, addressed bias directly, and established her authority. Her actions had not only protected her own interests, but had also provided a lesson in accountability for the staff and management. She had turned a potentially negative experience into a moment of clarity and principle. The CEO's decision to leave, rather than accept half-hearted apologies or performative gestures, sent a strong message. She demonstrated that professionalism and respect were essential in any business interaction, and that she would not compromise on these values. Her calm decisiveness reinforced the idea that authority and composure could command respect more effectively than anger or confrontation. Walking away, she considered her next steps. She had accomplished what she intended, highlighting the bias, demanding accountability, and asserting her values. Now she would seek a dealership that not only offered quality vehicles, but also matched her expectations of professionalism and respect. Her focus remained on achieving her objective without sacrificing integrity, demonstrating that principled action could lead to both personal satisfaction and professional success. Her presence and actions left a lasting impression on everyone in the showroom. The staff and management were reminded that assumptions and bias could have consequences, and that respect and professionalism were essential in maintaining client relationships. The CEO had turned a challenging encounter into a powerful demonstration of authority, clarity, and principle, showing that decisive, calm action could effect meaningful change. The CEO stepped out of the dealership and took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. The sunlight reflected off the nearby buildings, creating a warm glow that seemed to reinforce the clarity of her actions. She had handled a difficult situation with composure and authority, turning a moment of bias into an example of accountability and principle. Her steps were purposeful as she walked to her car, already planning her next move. She knew she needed to find a dealership that would value her time, respect her decisions, and provide the professional service she expected. She picked up her phone and began calling a few reputable dealerships she had previously researched. Unlike the earlier experience, these calls were met with efficiency and enthusiasm. Staff at these locations treated her with respect from the start, asking clear questions about her needs and scheduling appointments without hesitation. Within minutes, she had arranged to visit a dealership that understood the importance of client service. She felt a renewed sense of control and confidence, knowing that her time and authority were respected. The contrast between the two experiences was striking, highlighting the significance of professionalism and respect in every interaction. She reminded herself that her presence alone could demand change, and she intended to make the most of it. Arriving at the new dealership, the CEO was greeted warmly. The staff immediately engaged her with genuine attention, guiding her through the showroom and explaining the features of various vehicles with clarity and expertise. She appreciated the difference. It was refreshing to be treated with the professionalism she expected. Her earlier experience had sharpened her awareness, making her more attentive to every detail and every gesture. She began inspecting the vehicles she was interested in, testing features, asking questions, and requesting test drives. The staff responded promptly, answering each inquiry thoroughly and patiently. The CEO felt a sense of ease and respect, a stark contrast to the hesitation and subtle bias she had encountered before. She could focus on the task at hand, knowing that her expertise and authority were recognized and valued. During the test drives, the CEO evaluated each vehicle carefully, considering both practical and aesthetic aspects. She examined performance, safety features, comfort, and technology, ensuring that the choices she made would benefit her company and reflect her professional standards. The staff accompanied her attentively, providing detailed explanations and insights. She felt that she was in an environment where her decisions mattered and where her expectations were understood. After completing the evaluations, the CEO moved on to discuss financing and additional options. The staff provided clear information, outlining payment plans, warranties, and services without hesitation. The CEO appreciated the transparency and professionalism, feeling confident that this dealership was aligned with her standards. The process was smooth, efficient, and respectful, reinforcing her belief that her presence and authority deserved recognition. She made her selection thoughtfully, considering both the needs of her company and her personal preferences. The vehicle she chose was perfect for her requirements, combining style, performance, and practicality. The purchasing process was seamless, handled with care and attention. She felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her patience and discernment had led her to a positive outcome. Throughout the experience, the CEO remained observant, noting the difference in how staff treated clients when respect and professionalism were prioritized. She reflected on her earlier encounter, recognizing the importance of standing firm, asserting expectations, and maintaining composure in the face of subtle bias. Her actions had not only ensured a positive outcome for herself, but had also reinforced the value of accountability and respectful service. The CEO finalized the paperwork, reviewed the terms, and completed the purchase with confidence. The staff congratulated her and thanked her for her business, treating her with genuine appreciation. She left the dealership feeling empowered and validated, having navigated a challenging situation with poise and decisiveness. Her earlier dismissal of the first dealership had proven to be a wise choice, reinforcing her commitment to integrity and principle. Driving her new vehicle, the CEO reflected on the journey. The contrast between the two dealerships illustrated a powerful lesson about the importance of respect, professionalism, and accountability in business interactions. She recognized that standing firm, asserting authority, and maintaining composure could transform difficult situations into opportunities for growth and positive change. Her experience also reinforced the significance of self-worth and the power of choice. She had not allowed bias or hesitation from the first dealership to define her experience. Instead, she had navigated the situation strategically, using observation, patience, and decisive action to achieve a better outcome. She understood that her confidence, professionalism, and clarity had commanded respect and facilitated a successful resolution. As she drove through the city, the CEO felt a renewed sense of determination and empowerment. The experience had been challenging, but it had also demonstrated her ability to handle bias with grace, authority, and composure. She had turned a potentially negative encounter into a lesson in accountability, principle, and professional standards, setting an example for others to follow. The CEO's day concluded with a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction. She had successfully secured a vehicle that met her needs, demonstrated the importance of professionalism and respect, and reinforced her own authority and confidence. The journey had not only resulted in a tangible outcome, but also strengthened her understanding of the power of composure, assertiveness, and integrity in every interaction. Reflecting on the entire experience, she recognized that challenges and bias were inevitable, but the way one responds defines the outcome. By remaining calm, clear, and assertive, she had achieved a positive resolution while reinforcing her values and expectations. Her actions had ensured that respect, fairness, and professionalism were prioritized, leaving a lasting impression on both herself and the staff she encountered. In the end, the CEO's story was not just about purchasing a vehicle. It was about navigating a complex situation with intelligence, composure, and authority. It illustrated the importance of standing firm, demanding respect, and making decisions that align with one's principles. The experience left her feeling empowered, validated, and confident, demonstrating that professionalism, patience, and decisive action can overcome bias and lead to successful outcomes.